Watch the water. In an important game of golf, Willie Fraser, one of the best players, had a bad day. First, he hit the ball into the trees. Then he made a mistake, and his ball hit another player. After that, he hit the ball badly every time. "This isn't too good. I must be more careful," he thought. The first half of the game went badly. He lost 5 balls. A friend watched him and said, "Perhaps you'll have better luck in the second half." "Wait and see," Willie answered. He wanted to play well for this important game, but everything went wrong in the second half too. He lost more balls, he hit more trees, and then he hit the ball near a river. He walked up to the ball and hit it again. Everybody stopped to watch the ball. Will it go into the water? Perhaps he'll be lucky. But Willie wasn't lucky. His ball went into the water. He took his golf bag and threw it into the river after the ball. "Never again. That's it. I'm finished with golf." And he walked away angrily to his car. Suddenly he stopped, turned, and walked back to the river. All the players stopped again and waited. Willie arrived at the river and walked very slowly into the water. He stopped and carefully put his head under the water. "Oh no," his friend thought. "This is dangerous. I must help him." The friend ran to the river and was ready to jump into the water after Willie, when suddenly Willie found his golf bag, opened it, pulled out the keys of his car, climbed out of the river, and walked away. Hit and Hear. Charlie, a man about 75 years old, often went to a bar in London and met his friends for a drink. He liked a beer or two, and he also liked to talk and laugh. In the bar, he and his friends remembered the old days and told stories about when they were young. Charlie had one big problem. He couldn't hear anything in his left ear. When his friends spoke to him, they had to sit on his right. He couldn't hear anything because of an accident. He was quite young at the time. One day in 1930, when he was a small boy, he was on a bus in Liverpool with his mother. The bus hit a car, and young Charlie hit his head on the floor. From that day, he could only hear in his right ear. One evening, Charlie was with his friends, Bert and Jack, in the London bar, and Bert told a good story about the old days. Charlie liked the story very much and began to laugh. He laughed and fell off his chair. He hit his head on the table, and something fell out of his left ear onto the table. Bert took a small white thing from the table and said, "What's this? I think it came out of your ear." Jack looked at the white thing and answered, "It's a bus ticket." He looked again and said, "That's strange. It's a Liverpool bus ticket from 1930. Suddenly, Charlie said, "Oh, listen. I can hear in my left ear." "What?" said Jack. "I don't understand." "I couldn't hear with my left ear because that bus ticket was in my ear all that time." answered Charlie. They all laughed about the 1930 Liverpool bus ticket, and now his friends can sit on his right or on his left in the bar. Wrong in the head? In a new factory outside town, the people in the office didn't like Mr. Taylor, their boss. One day at lunchtime, Mr. Taylor walked through a market near his office. He saw some hats and thought, "I like those brown and black hats. Very nice." He thought about the hats for 2 or 3 minutes. "Perhaps I'll buy a brown hat tomorrow. I can wear it to work." The next day, he went back to the market and bought a brown hat. He wore it to work every day after that. But Mr. Taylor's brown hat was more for the garden than for the office. So everybody in the office laughed at him about it behind his back. 2 weeks later, 2 of the men from the office were in the market, and they saw some hats. "Look at those hats. They're the same as the boss's new hat," one man said. "That's right. He's got a brown one," the other man answered. "Let's buy the same hat. No, 2 hats. I've got a plan. Listen." The men bought 2 more hats, the same colour as Mr. Taylor's hat. But one hat was much bigger, and the other was much smaller. The next day, when Mr. Taylor was out for his lunch, the 2 men took his hat and left the bigger hat in the same place. At the end of the day, he took his hat and put it on. "This hat's too big," he thought. "Why? I don't understand." The next day, when Mr. Taylor was in the factory, the 2 men took the bigger hat and left the smaller hat in its place. When he was ready to go home, Mr. Taylor put on this hat, but it was very difficult. "Something's wrong here," he thought. "This hat's too small, but I think it's my hat." On some days, Mr. Taylor's hat was too big. On other days, it was too small. And on some days, it was right. After 2 weeks of these problems with his hat, Mr. Taylor began to think that something was wrong with his head. So he went to a doctor. "I've got a very unusual problem, doctor," he said. "My head is bigger one day and smaller the next, and sometimes it's okay. What do you think is wrong with me?"
Listen and practice. Learn English by storytelling.